Yo, it's your boy. Y'all listen to Cutsoy today, bro. We finna watch the rapper who ate his roommate. So, hey, we gonna see what's up this. He looks familiar, the dude on the thumbnail. I feel like I've heard about this, but I had to click on it, bro. I don't know the full details. So, anyways, let's get to this.
Horrorcore, a subgenre of hip-hop where rappers will take their lyrics, imagery, and messaging to the darkest brinks that they can possibly imagine. At times, this genre gives us some hard-hitting, intense storytelling that is both effective and artistic. Other times, it can be a bit gimmicky and seem more like a competition to say the most messed up thing possible, even if it means nothing. However, there is another category of horrorcore that has made the genre as controversial as it is, and that's when artists actually do the things that they are rapping about. Today we'll be talking about Big Lurch, an artist whose crime was
bro, that's not even horrorcore. That's not even a horrorcore, my nigga. That's just niggas in general, you feel me? But that's not even a genre. That nigga just doing what he's saying in lyrics.
More disturbing than anything he ever rapped about. A crime that included Class A drug use, murder, and actual cannibalism. This crime greatly overshadowed the career of Big Lurch, so unlike other episodes where we dive deep into their musical career, we're instead going to cover that briefly before jumping right into this insane case, because trust me, there is more than meets the eye when it comes to the case of Big Lurch. Antron Singleton was born on the 15th of September 1976 in Fort Worth, Texas. He had an early interest in poetry, but in the 80s this turned into a passion for hip-hop and he started rapping under the alias G Spade. This would later become Big Lurch because of how tall he was, standing at around 6'6" in size. In retrospect, Lurch had a lot of success in the 90s from an underground perspective, and he wasn't even really doing horrorcore at the time. He started collaborating with the likes of E40, RBL Posse, Mystical, and Too Short. Many of these artists are still well known today and had a huge impact on the hip-hop scene in the 90s, specifically in the West Coast. Big Lurch wasn't as well known as some of his contemporaries, but he was right there with them, collaborating, networking, and rubbing shoulders with some of hip-hop's biggest names. On top of this, he was quite talented and sounded right at home with the rappers he collaborated with.
We're jumping, pumping, brainwaves with no assumptions. I'm ready to roll with something. If you wanna come get it, I'm thumping. We get split quick, fucking with this. You don't understand. This ain't your average man.
Apart from his solo career, Lurch formed a group with
bro, what was he even saying, bro? I don't know what he said.
Musicians, Dooney Baby and Rick Rock. Together they created the trio known as Cosmic Slop Shop and released one studio album, The Family. From everything I was able to find, this album was also quite good and definitely well put together. Unfortunately, this didn't translate to sales and the album wasn't that successful. They had one song called Sinful that did decent numbers and got a small bit of radio play, but apart from that, the Cosmic Slop Shop weren't all that successful, and although there was a lot of potential and talent within the group, the numbers weren't there and the group disbanded in 1999. That was the end of Lurch's musical endeavors in the 90s, and although he wasn't a famous artist by any stretch, that particular decade wasn't all bad. He got his foot in the door, collaborated with quite a few accomplished rappers, and managed to release a full studio album through a record label with the group that he helped create. It looked like the 2000s might have been the decade that Lurch could truly find his success, but it started off in the exact opposite direction. On the 16th of September 2000, Antron was hit by a drunk driver and was badly injured. In order to cope with the pain that his crash brought him, he started taking PCP, otherwise known as angel dust.
You gonna take PCP as a pain reliever? I mean, don't get me wrong, I never done it, but I imagine that shit would cure your pain, my nigga, but that shit will probably bring way more pain in the future. This nigga bugging, bro.
A highly addictive hallucinogenic drug that also numbs the user. Although it could technically be used to numb
I mean, if a nigga does PCP, bro, I don't give a fuck, you feel me? But from experience, bro, like, seeing niggas on it, because I've seen niggas in public on it. You feel me? Not my niggas, but just people on it. And they always be tweaking. So, I don't know, bro. but this nigga Kodak said he's smoking that PCP, so I don't know, bro. I guess niggas is smoking some late shit. Not Kodak, the niggas on the street.
Body's pain. PCP is one of
Or maybe Kodak. I don't know. He said he knew the purse fake, but he still ate it
most
because he a
intense
gremlin.
drugs in the world.
You never
We've
know.
So many cases
You never
where
know
people do the
nowadays.
same things. While unfortunately for Lurch and those around him, he would be right in the midst of this insanity less than 18 months after his car crash. In the early 2000s, Big Lurch had started to perform horrorcore music. It wasn't a new genre by any means of the imagination, and he had definitely dabbled in it before, but he was ready to make a full project in the subgenre. While he was recording this project, he was living in a Los Angeles apartment with a few friends, including 21-year-old Tanisha Yesias and her boyfriend Thomas Moore. On April 9th, 2002, Thomas Moore and Antron started smoking PCP together. According to Antron and almost all of the people who were in the apartment that night, what actually happened was a blur, but the next morning, one of Tanisha's friends, Alyssa Allen, entered the apartment and found Tanisha's body. Her chest had been torn open, tooth marks were found on her body, and small parts of her remains were seemingly missing. Shortly after this, Antron Singleton was found in the streets of LA near his apartment. He was completely naked, covered in blood, and he was screaming at the sky.
Bro, this what I'm talking about, bro. Niggas take PCP and they be dripping. That's so deep, bro. But I'm not gonna lie, that is the definition of being a demon. This nigga, that he is a demon. But he did it to a shorty. Kind of loses credibility. Once you do some shit to a shorty, like if you did it to a nigga, okay, bro, that's a demon. But if you do it to a shorty, you're just a weirdo, bro. You just preying on the weak? Come on, bro. Not calling shorties weak, but you know, genetically wise, like most guys are stronger than most shorties, so they just preying on the weak, bro. That shit crazy.
He was immediately apprehended and taken into custody. A medical exam was conducted that showed that Singleton had recently consumed flesh that was...
Wait, he got on the mask?
At first glance, this case was open and shut. Antron Singleton had taken PCP with his friends, and a few hours later, he killed and ate parts of his roommate. Now, it is more convoluted than that, and we'll talk about that soon, but as far as the justice system was concerned, this was more than enough. Singleton pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but this defense failed, and in 2003, he was found guilty of murder and aggravated mayhem and was subsequently sent to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As I mentioned previously, Antron was working on a horrorcore album, and unfortunately for him, some of these songs were used against him in court. Specifically the song I Did It To You, a song where he talked about murder in a cold and unabashful way and compared himself to multiple different fictional horror characters and real-life serial killers.
Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger, Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, and all of your friends are Prince to school ya. The murder's a hobby, I'm using a torture chamber and not a Ruger, so if you wake up in a puddle of blood, I did it to you.
This song was from the album It's All Bad, and it was actually released by the label that he was working with a year after he was sentenced. A very strange and morbid promotional tactic they used was through the album artwork of this record. It was a Photoshop picture of Big Lurch holding a platter with a human skull on top of it, very obviously alluding to the horrid crime that he had committed. It was around this time that people started to ask some questions. The label were obviously trying to profit off this crime, and this put some interesting question marks on the case. The more people looked, the more people found, and as it turns out, there was a lot more discrepancies with this case than people think.
Was he innocent? Let's see.
Big Lurch didn't necessarily profess his innocence immediately. However, he always claimed that he had no idea what had happened on that night, and that it's entirely possible that there was a lot more to this story. The first reason there may have been some discrepancies was his label. He was signed to a record company called Black Market Records from Sacramento, and it's safe to say that they had quite the reputation. They would promote their artists as dangerous criminals, and they did everything in their power to sell this gangster image to the masses. We already talked about the disturbing album artwork that they released, but what you might not know is that Black Market Records had actually done this before with another artist named X-Rated. Rated was another rapper from the Sacramento area who went to prison around 10 years prior for murder. Black Market Records, his label at the time, released 4 albums while he was behind bars, and although it was apparent that X-Rated was involved in most of this, it's also very clear that Black Market Records were willing to market his music in whatever way possible. Allegedly, they did the same thing to...
Yep. And that's what labels do nowadays, you feel me? Because, nigga, like, if you sign a label, bro, if you sign to a label and you read, like, it probably says it on the thing. All you have to do is just read the whole thing. I know it takes time, bro. But if motherfuckers are trying to sign me, I'm saying, bro, give me an hour. I'm reading this whole shit. Give me an hour tops.
Big Lurch. Apparently, when they found out that he was smoking PCP for his pain, they decided to provide him with even more drugs in order to authenticate his gangster image and make his music more believable. This same argument was made by Tanisha's mother, Carolyn Stinson, who actually filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the label, claiming that they had fed Antron the drugs that led him to do this. This lawsuit didn't really go anywhere, but this theory remained quite popular for a while. However, it's not the most popular alternative to what happened that night. A documentary called Big Lurch, Rhyme and Punishment was released in 2011, and Big Lurch and Tanisha's mother told us a different side of the story.
As far as her boyfriend, he was a gang member, I believe he the one set all this up. He was beating on her. She had all her stuff packed, ready to leave the day all this happened.
They got me high on purpose to take advantage of me.
She got hit in the back of the neck with one of the little kids' scooters because her handprint was on the scooter, bloody handprint. But they said
But he low-key fucked it up though, because he tried to plead for insanity. And then you try to plead for insanity, and now you're acting like you're not insane anymore. That shit not gonna work, bro. They gonna look back on that shit unless you get a new judge and they don't look. You get lucky. They gonna look back at that shit, bro. They gonna look back.
Know who that was, but it wasn't his.
It's not even no proof that I actually did the murder. My prints wasn't on her weapon. It was a dope house. They didn't find no dope in the dope house, though.
She didn't smoke the PCP. It was like somebody pulled it down. You know, the bottle was pulled down her throat because she had so much in her system. They said ain't no way she could have smoked that. Footprints, fingerprints on doors, you know, bloody fingerprint. You know, shoe at the back door, you know, and it's like, where all this evidence go? It was DNA. Who DNA was? They said DNA came up lost. So they made it look like he did all this work to her. There's no way he could have done that work because the way she was messed up, hatred had to been there. And like he said, he didn't hate her.
Alright, so that's a lot to digest, so let's quickly break down everything that was just said. Firstly, Carolyn Stinson claims that Tanisha's boyfriend, Thomas Moore, was the man who orchestrated this killing. Apparently they had been fighting both verbally and physically, and Tanisha was more than ready to leave the apartment and the relationship. Antron also believes that he was set up because of the amount of PCP found in his system and her system. According to the medical examination, it was a surreal amount of PCP, and this immediately raised some eyebrows. Secondly, there was a lot of details about the case that was oddly looked over. For example, as Carolyn mentions in the clip, there was a bloody handprint on the scooter that was used in the attack. This handprint did not match Antron's hand, but it was never looked into further. There was also footprints and fingerprints around the actual crime scene that again was not looked into. Furthermore,
like, bro, this is how serial killers get away. Niggas like this, bro. Their whole job, I mean, fucked off, so thank God them niggas ain't doing a job, but nigga, they got a job. Every evidence, every shit on the scene is supposed to be picture a piece of evidence. Everything. I know back in this time, y'all had cameras. Y'all didn't have the phones, but y'all had the cameras. I know y'all had the cameras, bro. Niggas be capping for the clout, bro. I swear to God. They just wanted to make Bro, they just wanted to make bread off this nigga. That's all they want. Because when niggas is in jail, bro, they get bread. You feel me? Niggas get bread. Every time another inmate is in their shit, they get bread. So, bro.
Tooth marks on the actual body did not match the teeth of Antron, and he actually believes that they more than likely belonged to a baby pit bull that lived in the apartment as well. On top of all of this, there was a lone shoe that was found right by the crime scene that didn't belong to Antron or Tanisha, and this again was not investigated further. It seems like at the very least there was a lot of negligence when it came to this case. Big Lurch did a 36-minute interview with Vlad TV where he spoke about this case further and claimed the only reason he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity was because his lawyer told him to do so. Since his incarceration, Big Lurch has been studying the law himself to try and get a retrial. So far this has been unsuccessful, but based on a letter I found that he sent to a fan, he is still optimistic and hopes that a retrial will happen. In all honesty, based on the evidence that wasn't analyzed and the facts that were ignored, it does seem like a retrial should happen. I'm not saying that anybody is innocent or guilty, but when you look at the facts that were ignored, it's clear that there could be something else that happened on that night, and we may not have all the answers. Regardless of the mystery that surrounds that night, the results were the same, and they're absolutely horrific. It was honestly hard to read about the details of that night because of how intense and disturbing they were, and this case has been remembered as one of the darkest moments in hip-hop's history.
It's not hip-hop. You said it was horrorcore, right? Stick to it, bro. You said it's horrorcore. It's not hip-hop, it's horrorcore. Come on, bro. But anyway, that's it with everyone else to the channel. You feel me? This nigga, he could be innocent. But I feel like the cops and shit, they just didn't want to put in all the effort, look into the details, the evidence, because they had it all set up for them in the beginning. He was in the crib. You feel me? She already told us. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just got lazy that day. Because that's really what it is, bro. If the cops investigating your case feel lazy, you might have a chance to get away, bro. If that nigga's feeling a little bit lazy, you might get away, bro. But nowadays, motherfuckers got body cams, so it's kind of different. Back in the day, though, I say after 2015, that's when it got really camera, like technology, like privacy is nowhere type shit. After 2015. Shit crazy, bro. But hey, that's it with the rest of the channel. I'm finna catch you on the next one, bro. Stay safe.